A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
No doubt you've been hearing conversations on this program highlighting the importance of Christian schools maintaining the ability to employ staff who align with the school's ethos. As you'll know, there have been aggressive moves by both federal and state governments to displace the rights of Christian schools to employ Christians. So what do the teachers think when they work in a Christian school? Well, an alliance of Christian school associations has released the findings from its survey of over 5,000 teaching and non-teaching staff across Christian schools nationwide. Let's talk about those findings with Vanessa Cheng, who is Executive Officer at the Australian Association of Christian Schools. Vanessa, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thank you, Neil.
Vanessa, what does this survey show in the overall about faith and about teachers and about Christian schools?
The survey confirms what we already knew, but it provides some really comprehensive results. 99% of staff agreed or strongly agreed that their school should be able to employ staff who share the beliefs of the school. So this confirms what we've been saying all along. For us, faith is integral to being a Christian school. That's what parents are signing up for when they send their children to our schools. And staff agree that if that was to change, if the laws were to change and make it more difficult for our schools to employ Christian staff, the culture would change significantly if those laws were introduced.
Now, this is a particularly critical time, isn't it? The Tasmanian Government Administrative Committee, they're going through their own inquiry process at the moment. What's that all about, and how important is this survey with that inquiry going on?
Yeah, so the inquiry in Tasmania is being conducted by the Administration Committee. It's focusing on students and staff in Tasmanian schools. And it was actually prompted by a report by the Australian Council of Education Research, which did actually reveal some alarming statistics showing that Australian teenage students have the second highest levels of bullying in the OECD, and in particular, Tasmanian students face the highest rates of bullying nationwide. So it's a really important issue, bullying in schools. There's been lots of submissions from a range of schools and parents about this important topic. But I guess the fact that the terms discrimination and bullying are in this inquiry mean we're concerned that it could go beyond the topic of bullying, and the committee might also decide to make recommendations about restricting the law to mean that it's more difficult for schools to employ staff of the same faith, because they would classify that as discrimination. So some important issues to unpack in this inquiry. Certainly, Christian schools have a zero tolerance of bullying of any sort, and parents choose Christian schools because they do offer a safe, caring environment. But discrimination is a slightly different topic, and religious schools, do want to be able to employ staff who share that faith so that they can show that Christian love to the students in our schools.
An interesting dimension you raise, where perceptions of how significant bullying is within a school may actually be influenced by the level of Christian faith in those school teachers. Is there any sort of correlation there that listeners might appreciate?
Certainly, we receive lots of stories from Christian school parents. When we put the call out to our supporters in Tasmania, so many people wrote in with examples of how their children might have been bullied at another school, but then they switched them across to a Christian school and they did notice a significant difference. I guess for us as Christians, love is what we're commanded to do, to love all people just as Jesus commanded us. And also we see that everybody is made in the image of God. So that's the faith perspective that our Christian teachers and staff come to this. It motivates them, and it creates that culture, teaching the children in our schools to be respectful, to love each other, to see each other as made in God's image. So our schools are really proactive in addressing bullying, and there are so many stories. Over 50 stories and emails were sent to the committee of parents who just said their Christian schools are safe, supportive environments where children are cared for, they're loved, they're nurtured, with a strong culture of care and compassion.
And I guess it's got to be fair to say that all schools, whether they be state schools or Christian schools, they're going to have issues and incidents of bullying. But I guess for people who are looking in from outside, they'll know where the ethics are of a Christian school and the sorts of values that are held very, very deeply. Let me in on some of the main issues that the survey highlights. 5,000 people responded here. There's got to be some significant things. What were the main things that came to light for you?
What was interesting was the teachers that were surveyed, they were asked about whether they felt the media accurately represents faith-based school. And 96% of teachers and staff believes that the media doesn't accurately represent faith-based schools. And so that's a concern, that the faith of teachers and staff isn't valued by mainstream media and sometimes governments. And this is a problem that we've been facing around the country, that governments think it doesn't matter whether you're a Christian or not. As long as you are a qualified teacher, you should be able to work in a Christian school. Perhaps the chaplain needs to be a Christian, but they don't necessarily see the value of faith for all staff. That's not what we're about. We want everybody to be on the same page, and that's what parents want when they send their children to a Christian school. We want to be able to deliver that for parents, that culture, that environment. And so, we need laws to be able to protect us from being accused of discrimination when we're making those employment choices. And so, again, these types of inquiries, and the one in Tasmania, we're concerned it might be looking to weaken those laws and make it more difficult for Christian schools to employ Christian staff, or Catholic schools to employ Catholic staff, which is just common sense, I think.
Interesting to hear you reflect, Vanessa, on the media and how they'll portray these sorts of issues. And we might all have a presumption that the media, leaning left, is against the Christian side, and you might be able to let us in here about the sort of media you receive, the sort of reception you get when you're sending releases to mainstream outlets, and compared perhaps to what happens when you send one to us. Are you getting a fair hearing in media around these issues?
It's a challenge, Neil. Thank you for responding to my release and offering me this interview to share the findings of our survey. But we didn't have any response from mainstream media. Generally, mainstream media will look for controversy because sometimes good news stories don't sell as easily as, controversial stories. And so that's tricky because, often it's those negative stories that might get airplay in the mainstream media, but there are so many positive good news stories in Christian schools, and we would just love for some of those stories to be covered by mainstream media to help change those perceptions.
Let's come back to the teachers. That's a big number of people who are a part of this survey, 5,000. They themselves, this is the Christian teachers, they are appreciating what's happening with other Christian teachers in their own school context and recognising that it all sort of holds together when everybody has the same faith ethos. That's something that they want to hold tight to. They don't want that to be all shattered, do they?
No, I used to be a teacher in a Christian school myself, and they are such special places to work in. And teachers, and it's not just teachers, but often, support staff who've perhaps worked in secular organisations, they come and work in a Christian school and they just can't believe the difference. It really is a community of faith. For example, when I was in a Christian school, we'd start the day with prayer and devotions every morning, praying for the school day ahead, praying for the students, and it just set the tone for the whole day. I mean, that you can't pray with a whole lot of staff if only half of them are Christian. It would just be very awkward for the people who don't believe. So something very special and unique would be lost if you can't ensure that everybody's on the same page in terms of their faith perspective, and teaching and modelling that faith to the students who are in the school.
A little bit of common sense there, and demonstrates just this significant influence that a Christian school has when the teachers hold their faith very, very carefully, because when you're nurturing students and their character and a thing called a moral compass, if everyone's on the same page, you can easily or more easily point students in a right direction, can't you? But if everyone's doing and thinking and believing what they want, there is no such thing as a moral compass.
Absolutely. And, kids can see through hypocrisy very quickly. If you have teachers who, are not really believing the beliefs of the school, but still working in a Christian school, I think that could be very confusing for the students. And that's the last thing we want. We want people who are representing the school and being employed by the school to be truly on board with the mission and ethos of the school.
Let me ask you about government, the responses, because you're on that lobbying end. You're putting forward the arguments for Christian schools. Are you getting a hearing from state and federal members?
Yes, so earlier this week there were Christian school representatives that appeared at the public hearing in Tasmania for this inquiry into bullying and discrimination. And so, we've had that hearing and that opportunity. It's interesting also to note with this inquiry what prompted it. Christy Johnston, the member for Clark, initiated a motion to create this committee inquiry. And she's actually a parent at a Catholic school parent, and she was concerned by a letter that she received from Archbishop Julian Porteous called Salt of the Earth, which basically outlined traditional Catholic teaching about a whole range of issues, but did include a defence of traditional teachings on marriage and sexuality and other family values. She got quite offended and upset by this letter and labelled it discriminatory because it was seen as hurting various groups. So that's the genesis of the inquiry. And I guess we're concerned that committee members might be unduly influenced by people who are against faith-based schools or who are against people of faith. And they might make recommendations to restrict freedom of religion and freedom of speech in Tasmania. So that's why we're taking this inquiry very seriously to ensure that, Catholic schools can continue to teach Catholic beliefs and Christian schools can continue to employ and teach Christian beliefs. It's really important in a pluralistic, free society that we can have those freedoms.
Well, no doubt all states and territories are under pressure, but certainly Tasmania, they're on the cutting edge, and that inquiry continuing with some sort of outline or report by the end of the year. Let me point listeners to how to connect with Australian Association of Christian Schools. And just let me ask you, Vanessa, I'm going to give the website address in just a moment. Is there some resource or some detail for parents there to understand what's happening so far as this survey and the developments that are happening around Christian schools and their ability to employ Christian staff? Is there some resource on your website?
Yes, certainly on our website. And I'll also point out another website that's designed specifically for parents, and it's called mychristianschool.au. And this is a website that's had over 13,000 parents and supporters sign up. And if you sign up at that website, you will get regular updates on issues from around the country that affect Christian schools. So mychristianschool.au. Okay,
so the website mychristianschool.au, and the website for the Australian Association of Christian Schools is AACS. .net.au. That's AACS.net.au. Vanessa Cheng, the Executive Officer of the Australian Association of Christian Schools. Vanessa, thanks so much for sharing these thoughts with us today on 2020.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.